You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Welcome back to another Transformational Stories episode. Today we've got Megan, and Megan is going to be talking a little bit about her transformational story and the courageousness and the bravery and the resilience and the grit that she had to endure and she had to cultivate within herself in order to get through her story. And this story is a heavy one, and I am just so in awe of her ability to be vulnerable and her ability to transmute everything that happened with her in her childhood to the woman, the strong woman that she is today. So join me in welcoming Megan. Megan, thank you so much for your story. So welcome. We have got Megan here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her courageous story and everything that happened. We discussed a little bit beforehand before we started, and she's shaking. So big round of applause in everyone's vehicles or whatever you are listening to this for Megan. She's going to rock it. So Megan, what is your story? What is your transformational story?
Okay. So my story is kind of, it's twofold. So it's got, it's a story about, I'm an abuse victim. And then I also, it kind of grows into being a chronic illness sufferer.
Okay.
And so,
one in the
growing
same.
up, growing up, I lived with a very abusive, I lived part-time. So, the system was involved. And the system decided that it was safe enough and reasonable for me to live with my dad part-time. So I think before I was like 3 or something, it was like we did just shorter visits, but they were unsupervised. And then after that, they increased. And so it was like every other weekend and half of every holiday. And so it was like two weeks at a time over summer, to a total of like, so it'd be 2 weeks there, 2 weeks at my mom's, 2 weeks there, and then 2 weeks at my mom's, and then back to school. And then every other weekend, and then same at Christmas kind of thing, it was split up. And so, we would go there, and basically, he was just not, it wasn't the safe situation that the system really deemed it to be.
Yeah.
And so while there, we witnessed a whole lot of stuff that really no kid should witness. We had a lot more freedoms than kids really should have. And we... I guess I don't remember a lot of, like, if there was a lot of, like, reasonable or great times or anything like that. But the times that I do remember that were decent, they were really more just good times so that we would stay. And so that we wouldn't like, so if we went to my grandma's and she would make me crepes, which I liked crepes, you know, I really feel like that was just a manipulation to make sure that we would keep going there, you know, because we did get a few things that were decent, or that, you know, we liked, or that was okay, that wasn't just absolutely horrific. And so
there was a form of gifting and you know, to cultivate some form of relationship. Exactly.
And so as I kind of grew a little bit more, like my brain started like, and I'm not sure if it was like my brain that started it, or if it was like people that were like, no, you just dreamt that up, like that's not real. But then I ended up starting to have like really horrific like nightmares, and they turned into like where they'd play even if I was awake, and like I would just see these images of like just really awful things. And I learned later in life that they were actually things that had happened, that I'd witnessed, that I'd seen, that had been paraded in front of me. And like they were very much real, but I was so convinced that they weren't real, and that there was just no way that that could possibly be real. And so they went on as nightmares for a very, very, very long time, and daymares, and until I was maybe 2 years ago. And so we ended up, I'm now medicated for it, and that all started like a while before, like 2 years ago, but it was like about 2 years ago is when we finally, I think, kind of got it all to stop. And so yeah, anyway, sorry, so back to kind of
deep
so
breath.
when I was,
you're doing great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, the good things that were extended were, to me, just to keep us going there. And so I feel like at those ages, like when I was younger, I could really kind of see through them, and so I was never really, I didn't ever feel indebted to them. And so when I got to be like 9, 10, I was in ringette, and on the weekends that I was with my dad, he really just didn't want me to go. And I remember one time he like wrapped me in a blanket and like had me on the couch and was trying to convince me that I was sick. And I remember him taking the thermometer, and he like checked my temperature, and he took it over to the sink, and I'm very certain he ran like hot water over it to convince me I was sick. And I was like, I'm not sick, I feel fine, like I would like to go to ringette. I do believe I got to go to ringette that weekend. I'm sure I missed other weekends of ringette because of stuff like this. But I remember it so clearly, him going to the sink, running it underwater, and coming back and being like, look, you have a temperature, like, and like just stuff like that was just like, I know I'm not sick, but like I'd like to go to ringette now, like, but just to keep you there. And it's not like he wanted you there, it's not like he cared that you were there, he just cared that you weren't elsewhere.
Right.
And
sounds like a sense of control that he tried to invoke on both of you.
Very much so. And there was, so the last time that the last time that I went there for like an overnight, it was over Easter, it was just me, and I got there, and so I guess before I got there, my my dad had called me up and he was like, no, you are coming. And I was like, I'm not going. I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go there alone. I don't want to go, period. Like, I just don't want to go. Let me have this weekend. I don't want to go. And he would not. He was like, I'm going to come. I'm going to drag you out of your mom's house. You're coming. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to do this. Like, no. And so finally we got to I'm going to drag you out of the house anyway, and you're coming with me anyway. And I was like, okay, I will go. I'll just go. Like, whatever. So I went. And my grandma picks me up. She drops me off at my dad's, and I walk in the door. And I wasn't happy to be there. I wasn't excited to be there. He was busy over at the table smoking or something with his friends. And I didn't immediately run over to him and give him a hug and say, oh, hey, Daddy, I'm so happy to see you. I'm so happy to be here. And so he came over and he gave me what for. And he was like, if I had done this to my dad, like, he would have beat me with his belt and blah, blah, blah. And, like, just freaked out. And so my grandma took me to her house. This was kind of her thing. She would take me and she'd be like, oh, you know, your daddy, he's just, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, he's an angry person who's, like, very abusive, and you're enabling him.
Right.
But so she takes me to her house. She probably made me crepes because that was kind of her routine. And eventually she took me back to his house, and it was a week of absolute atrocities. Like, it was horrendous. And I remember the phone being unplugged from the wall, and I remember his girlfriend being over, and there was a lot of unpleasantness with that. And I remember at one point, when the phone was plugged in, I did manage to get a call out to my mom. And I was like, hey, Mom, like, because my brother, he was on a trip, and he was arriving home on a certain day at a certain time. And my dad was like, I am going to pick him up. I'm going to go there and I'm going to pick him up, and nobody's going to be able to say anything. And I'm just going there and I'm just picking him up. And, like, my brother didn't want to go with him. And so I managed to get a call out to my mom, and I was like, like, my dad was either passed out drunk or out on a liquor run. I don't really know. Drug run. I don't know. I don't care. But I managed to get a call out, and I was like, Mom, like, I don't know. He's going to show up there. I don't know what's going to happen. It's not good. I just need you to know this. And so my mom, I didn't know this at the time, but she'd actually already gotten a cell phone because she had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. And so she was already kind of gearing up for it. And so sure enough, the day comes. He loads me up in the car, and we arrive at was to be picked up. And he says no. He doesn't want to come with us. And so he walks away from the vehicle, and my dad's having a civil-ish, not civil, I shouldn't say civil. Civil's not the word to use, but having a conversation-ish with him. Mostly demanding that he come with us, but they were far enough away from the vehicle that I got out of the vehicle, and I went over and I was like, I don't want to be here either. Like, I don't want to go with you either. And so in that moment, my dad grabbed me. He was like, I told you to stay in the car. And he grabbed me and he dragged me across the parking lot. And my mom had already called 911, I believe, at this point. Or right in that moment, she called 911. And he starts trying to shove me in the car. And so thankfully, my mom had wedged herself between the car and me, so my dad couldn't shove me in the car. And very quickly, the police showed up. And so my dad stopped when the police officer showed up, or maybe kept trying for a while and then stopped. And the police officer was like, okay, look, she doesn't want to go with you. I can't make her go with you. Like, you know, you're going to have to figure this out another way. And so he gets my grandma on the phone, and she's on the phone with me, and she's like, well, what has your daddy ever done to you? In the moment, I couldn't think of anything he'd ever done to me.
Yeah.
Not like he just dragged me across the parking lot and tried to shove me in a car or anything like that, or threatened to beat me with a belt 3 days prior to this or anything like that, and she was a witness to it or anything. But like, what had he ever done to me? And so I should just get in the car and go with them.
Right.
And so, like, you know, so in that moment, the police officer was like, she doesn't have to stay on the phone. And so my mom grabbed the phone, hung it up, and, or said, say bye. So I said bye, hung it up, or took it, hung it up. And with the officer there, it was settled, and I went home with my mom. And that was the last time that I spent overnights until I was an adult with any family, I believe, from that side of my family. And I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty confident in that. And so fast forward a couple years, my little brother shares a birthday with Father's Day, or at least at one point did. I don't know I think Father's Day kind of switches around a bit. It's like whatever weekend, and sometimes, I guess, my brother's birthday sometimes falls on it. Okay. Anyways, so I took too long to call my dad on Father's Day when I was like 16 or something. And he decided he was going to like just absolutely let me have it. And I was like, I was at a soccer tournament. I was celebrating my brother's birthday. Like, I called you at like 9 that night, and you're losing your mind on me. Like, no. So I hung up the phone, and I didn't talk to him for about a year and a half. And then he almost drove off the road because of a vehicle. Some part on his truck had broke, I think a tie rod end or something, and he almost drove off the road in the mountains, and he could have died. And like, so my older brother came to me and convinced me to talk to him again, because he could have died, and what if he died and I never talked to him again?
What were you thinking?
I'd be okay with that.
Fair. Yeah.
But with that being said, I was 17, and you know, this is how narcissistic abusers wiggle their way back in.
Yep.
And I was 17, so I ended up a little while later, I think I called him up, or I texted him, probably called him up. I don't know how big texting was at the time. It was probably a bit of a thing, but and I think we met for like dinner or something, and that's kind of how he ended up back in my life. And so we ended up, I guess he was no longer so estranged, I guess. And so I went back for like Christmases, and I'd go for Easters, and I would go for like people's birthdays. And that was most of what I would kind of be there for. I did end up at one point for about 3 months, I lived with my grandma. And I do really appreciate the time that I had with my grandma. She's passed now. I do understand that she was very much enabling. And I don't appreciate that so much, but at the same time, you know, she's my family, and I'm thankful that I had that time with her. And do I wish she'd made better decisions? Yes.
Of course.
Do I fault her for not making better decisions? Somewhat, yeah. She was the adult in that situation. She could have made better decisions, but she chose not to for whatever reason. And fast forward another few years, I was sitting with my dad in a garage, in my grandma's garage, and for the first time in my entire life, he decided to tell me that I'm probably not even his kid. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm like 20. This is right after I'd met Sean. So I want to say I was about 26. And he tries to throw that at me. And let me tell you, if there was another option, I'm quite certain my mom would have selected that option. I don't think she would have put us through all of this, just because she felt like it. So I'm quite confident there is not another option out there. But with that being said, he tried to say that, and I was like, no, I'm not here for this. I'm not here to listen to this. I'm going home. We'll see you later. And so I left. And as I was leaving, he freaked out. He was standing in front of my truck. Then he would run to the door, try to get it open. He'd go to the front of the truck. He'd go to the side, and he'd try to get the door open. He'd stand in front of the truck the second I try to move. And he'd go to the side. And I have seen him drag people out of vehicles before, many a times. It doesn't end well for that person. So the second, I don't know how he managed to do it, but the door ended up opening, and I flew out of there. So he ended up shouting, and so I called my aunt, and because I didn't call my grandma, because every time I call my grandma, she's like, well, what has your dad ever done to you? And I'm quite confident if I'd gone back that, I'm quite confident if I'd gone back that night, I was probably going to end up buried in a backfield or something. I'm not doing that. So, so I called my aunt called my grandma, and my grandma, I don't know, went and dealt with them. And then, so that was that. And that was kind of the last moment where I was like, I'm not doing this forever. So I started only going out there with my husband, and we started kind of putting safeties in place. Shortly after this, I started seeing a therapist, and she's been really wonderful. And as things have kind of evolved over the last few years here, so I'm now 30, and as things have kind of evolved over the last few years here, there have just been a few incidents, where instances, there we go, that'll be the word I use.
There you go, I like it.
Where I just, they were a bit too much to ignore, and the going there for holidays and the occasional birthday and stuff like that just really ended up not being a reasonable, positive thing. When I was 28, I ended up falling extremely ill with adult onset Still's disease. We didn't know what it was. We weren't sure if I was going to make it through or not. And so when I kind of made it through that, it was like, okay, I need to reevaluate some things here. And I tried to stay, in their lives during the Christmas and holidays and stuff like that. And it just wasn't possible. Because every time I would try to do that, my dad would ask for more. And so he tried to ask if I could call to see if I could find, he asked for help with kenneling his dog. And so we can't take another dog. We have 2 dogs, and his dog's much bigger than our dog and not as trained as our dogs, and not really city trained. And so, our yard's well fenced, but not perfectly fenced. And so heaven forbid this dog that doesn't live in a city got loose in a city.
Right.
It's not fair to anybody to ask this. And so You know, I looked into kennels for him, and I got the information for the kennels. Well, the dog wasn't vaccinated, so then I got the information on appointments from vets, and I was like, hey, these are the information for vaccination appointments for vets. Well, that wasn't good enough. Then he wanted me to book the dog in, and I was like, well, I don't know your schedule, and there's like 5 minutes to closing for this vet. And like, he wants me to be the go-between for booking the appointment, and I'm like, no, I've gotten you all of the information. I am feeding it to you on a silver platter. Book the appointment.
Yeah.
Just book it, you know? And it ended up turning into a thing where he was freaking out at me, calling me names, swearing at me, and he was like, well, I'm sick. Like, he's diabetic, like through drinking and stuff like that. He's acquired diabetes and stuff, which I sympathize with. I really do. At the same time, I have my own health issues, and I can't be doing everybody's running around. I had just taken a leave of absence from work because I couldn't do my day-to-day duties at work. I couldn't function properly to do that, and I couldn't function properly at home. I still struggle, like, greatly. And so I told him no, and that was just this huge thing. And Sean ended up having to like read through some, like, this is what we do. So my husband reads the messages, and then if there's something I need to take care of, he'll give me the phone. And if there's something I don't ever need to read because they're that horrendous, my husband just deletes them. He'll read them, and he just deletes them because I don't need to see them.
Wow.
So I'm very thankful for my husband. And we do that less now because I don't talk to him much now. In that moment, we realized, so we spoke with my counselor, and we realized, and we came to the conclusion that we could not continue on with that, and we went down to inviting them for dinner. And so we would go to, we have this restaurant in town called Castle, and they're really quick. You get there, they take your order, they give you your food. Like, they bring out your drink, they take your order, they bring out your appetizers, they bring out your food, then they give you your bill. And there's very little time for talking because you're always eating or drinking.
So good.
And so it's like the perfect place to like to go and be able to have kind of a reasonable, safe meal, and then just go home. And so we started with that, and then my dad was like, well, I don't feel comfortable there. Just come out to my place, and we'll have a meal here. I'll barbecue for you. And I'm like, okay, if you don't feel comfortable with Castle, that's okay. How about coffee? We'll do coffee. Yeah. It's been almost 2 years of just offering coffee, asking for coffee. And he has not once taken me up on the offer to go for coffee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He still messages me not great things when he feels like it. This year on either his birthday or Father's Day, I got a message saying, check yourself. I don't need you anyway, or something. Before that, there's been other messages that are fairly in line with that. So, I mean, they're still better than they used to be. That's not one that my husband would have to look at and delete before I could see it. Or without me seeing it. There's, he like showed up at my house on my birthday and dropped money in my mailbox, and we ran it back out to him because we were like, no, this is not coffee. Which we won't be doing that anymore. We have future plans for that. That money will not be going to back to him. It won't be going to me either. We will be donating it in his name. And so, and then he can get the tax receipt. That works great for him, and it has nothing to do with me. Because I'm just, all I want is coffee. All I'm available for is coffee. I'm willing to be your daughter still.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to be here. I'm not cutting off contact entirely. Before my wedding,
Mm-hmm.
I tried to invite him for coffee on a few different occasions, and he never once took me up on it. And so we didn't have a chance to talk to him about anything before the wedding, and so he didn't get to come to my wedding. And that was almost a tough one, but at the same time, if you're choosing to not be in my life outside of the big events, in as little a way as coffee, why do you get to be there in my life for the big events like my wedding?
Right.
So.
Wow. Yeah. So Megan, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the sort of transformation that you have gained from this horrific process is you have truly learned to stand in your own power. Am I correct in that?
I really have. And the other thing that I've really taken from it is, and this is the part that I kind of had to add in notes for, is I really try to remember when I'm forming relationships with people that this is a part of who I am. This whole, I mean, this is a huge part of who I am. It's been, 30 years of my life. So it's a huge part of who I am. And it's never going to change that this is part of who I am. But what I can change is the choices that I make coming out of this. And so how I go forward, I choose to do the right things every day. Maybe not every time, maybe not every single time. I still make a lot of not great choices, but I'm not perfect. But I try to make the right choices. I try to make the choices I need to be the right wife for my husband, the right sister to my brothers, the right friend to my friends, and the right daughter to not only my mom, but the right daughter to my dad, because he doesn't need a daughter that's a punching bag. That's not going to serve any purpose for him, other than to serve his narcissistic personality. But I can be a daughter that can be there for coffee when he's ready, and if he's ever ready, and then I wake up every single day. I try to make some good decisions throughout the day, and then I take my medications faithfully before I go to bed. And if I'm lucky, I get to wake up the next day and I start it all over again, because there's been times where the next day wasn't guaranteed.
Wow.
And it sounds mundane, but I'm thankful for every minute of it.
Wow. That's beautiful. That is just, that is just so beautiful. And, over and over again, when these bad things happen to us, we have an opportunity, like we spoke about, to be better or to be bitter. And you are such a strong woman. Like you can hear it in your voice, in the way that you speak, that you have firm boundaries, and that you have learned to be very self-preserving, and now you have the strength to share it with other people so that they could potentially, see themselves in what you're saying. So, I truly, I don't know if you see it as clearly as I do, but your transformation is unbelievable, for you to come out of something, the person that you've come out of. Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate that it is visible. I guess I have one more thing I do feel like I need to say, and that's if you're an adult in this situation, if you're not the abuser in this situation, if you're the sibling of the abuser, if you're the mother of the abuser, if you're the neighbor of the abuser, if you're the people that go to church down the street from the abuser, if you see something, it's okay to say something. It's okay to call the people who can do something. It could have saved me years and years and years of going through this. And it can save many other kids years and years and years of going through this. like in our situation, there was a safe home, you know?
Yeah.
We had a safe home, and the system deemed this other home safe enough, and it wasn't.
Right.
And so we were stuck going there.
Yeah.
Maybe as a 30-year-old, I wouldn't have to be so regimented in taking my medications every day. Maybe I wouldn't have to be so regimented in making the decisions to be the right wife for my husband, and the right friend to my friends, and the right sibling to my siblings every day.
Right.
Had somebody made that call.
Absolutely. And who could they call going forward if someone were to witness this?
So you can call Child Protective Services. And I don't know if anybody outside of Canada will end up listening to this ever. I don't know who that is within your area. You can call, for our area, it's like the RCMP. You can call Child Protective Services. You can call, gosh, I don't even know. I can get a list so that it can be like listed on the podcast.
Yeah, I can link it in the show notes and everything for sure. Yeah, we can kind of compile a little bit of a list of some resources for people listening, ways that they can help. Now, if it's appropriate and okay, what advice, I can see the advice that you're offering others, and I'm so grateful for it. What advice might you offer the victim going forward?
So, just make the decisions you need to make to get through it. And, you know, when you're in the situation, I know for me, like growing up, I didn't know a whole lot of different. And so it didn't, I couldn't have, looking back, I could be like, well, you know, I really should have told somebody else, but like people knew, so I couldn't have made a different decision in regards to that.
Gotcha.
You know, CPS was involved. They still had us going there. I couldn't have made a different decision in regards to that. But just understand that it's not something that even has anything to do with you. It's to do with your abuser. These are decisions that they are making. And, you know, when you get through it, and you will,
beautiful.
You know, it might not feel like it gets better. It does get better. And just every single day, wake up and make the choices you need to make to be the person you want to be.
Gorgeous. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, Megan. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, making that choice to know that, you know, this is not a reflection of you. It is a reflection of them. You know, I think that's so key, you know, and like you said, knowing that it will get better, you know, another podcast for another day, but I too have some abuse stories, and, you know, I would say a lot of what you are saying is very much a reflection for myself, you know, that the bad thing had nothing to do with me. And, you know, the person who I am now, I create safety for others because of how I did when I didn't feel safe, right? You know, and that's something that you now do. So, and that segues nicely to how people can connect with you, because I know that you're wanting to create some awareness around this and help people just, you know, doing that beautiful thing that we're talking about. So we talked a little bit about how they might be able to find you. So I've got YouTube and Instagram. So where can people find you and connect with you to follow along with your journey?
So on Instagram, I'm Stills Maggie Mick. So Stills STILLS, Maggie MAGGIE, Mick MC on Instagram, and then on YouTube, I'm Stills STILL''S with a space between Maggie and Mick. And you can find me both places. I put out content typically every Saturday. If I'm feeling well enough, occasionally I miss a Saturday, but it's not too often. Usually I have at least a little bit of something for on every Saturday. My awesome. Instagram, I'm less consistent, but usually I've got kind of something up there. Cool. But yeah, I was trying to post every time I had a video on Instagram, but you know, distance makes the heart grow fonder, so sometimes I don't.
Fair enough. I understand. Yeah. There's too many social media platforms out there. But you choose the one that speaks to your heart, and you go with that. Yeah. So once again, just, you know, thank you so much for sharing such a courageous and vulnerable story. There are people that are listening to this who are saying, you know, oh my God, you know, and having those ahas, and it is because of your strength, you know, and it isn't talked about. This is not talked about, you know, and so to have your strength and then to further that by being a light for people, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, your bravery is unprecedented. Yeah. Well,
and if you're in these situations and you're listening, it's okay to leave. It's okay to leave, and it's not you. And these people don't change. They don't. I have 30 years of experience. Many people have tried to change this person. They don't change. They remain a constant. The only thing that can change is you and your decisions and who you choose to be. And it's not who you choose to be to this person. This person remains a constant, and they'll never see you differently than they see you right now. That'll never change.
Right. Very well said. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to...
It's okay to leave.
Yes, of course. And very well said. I completely agree. It is okay to leave if you are not in a space that feels safe. Like you said, their context of the world is never going to change, you know, so your context is the only thing that can. So I agree with you 100%. I will end this portion of the call and then we can chat a little bit afterwards. But again, thank you so much, Megan, for being a part of this, and
thank you for having me,
helping so many people. Okay. All right.
Wow, just wow. I know you will join me in the awe for her bravery and her grit to get through the story that she has just told us. And also for all of the lessons that she's given us for different ways that we can connect with people going through similar situations, or if you yourself are going through a similar situation, knowing that you are not alone and that they are not alone. We've got people like Megan who have become so strong and so beautiful as a result of their discomfort and of their story. So again, thank you again, Megan, for all of your vulnerability, and thank you for sharing it with all of us. I know that this will be so healing for some people and so healing for yourself as well. So thanks again, and until next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.